Hi, Peter Phelan here with West Marine, here today to discuss cutting and sizing a fixed length SUP paddle. The one we have today is actually from Surfstow. It is their elliptical shaft and it has a bamboo blade and everything. The difference is when you actually have a fixed length, you can't adjust it and everything, so you have to be able to go and do some sizing. So we're here to make it kind of easy and a simple job for yourselves to go and do. To properly size your paddle, you're going to need the following items: a saw guide, saw, tape, measuring tape, safety goggles, marker pens, and of course some sandpaper after you've done your cut, some epoxy. The one I'm going to be using today is the 5-minute epoxy from West Systems, but there is a few choices out there, kind of gloves. And then one other item which this paddle actually has and some of the others is actually shrink tape to make sure you get a good full waterproof seal. And so you would need a heat gun or just even a lighter to go and kind of make sure that gets sealed up. Next, we need to determine where to cut the actual shaft. What you need to determine this is what type of riding you're going to be doing. Are you going to be either surfing with this board, or are you just going to be cruising around in more flatter water? On average, you want to add, if you're just kind of cruising, 12 inches to the length over your height. If you're going to be in the surf more in this, you want to be adding about 8 inches over your height. Myself, I'm 5'10", so I know it's going to be 70 inches and plus the length. So I mainly cruise around, so I'm going to be adding 12 inches in there. One thing to actually help determine this before you do anything is knowing how long the actual handle is. This one is 4 inches long, so we've got to make sure we take that out of the calculation. So today we're going to be looking to make sure we do this at about 78 inches. So once you've established your length you're going to be cutting at it, this one I've just pre-marked on here, everything. Before you do your cuts, you want to make sure you kind of feel like that is going to be in the right position for you. The reason you want to do that is because once the end is glued on, it's not coming off, and you don't want to be having to do this twice and everything. So always kind of do a couple of checks to go through, and we'll also be showing you a bit later on how to do that before you actually glue on. Okay, now we're getting prepared to go and cut the actual shaft. Already put the safety goggles on. This is where you just make sure you get it lined up. Okay, once you have that cut off, you're going to make sure you don't have any kind of splinters off. If you have the sandpaper out, this is the kind of moment you'd want to actually make sure you tidy it up. And just make sure there's nothing sticking up. You've got no fiberglass splinters, carbon especially. Then I'm going to actually remove the tape so we can actually test the T-handle and make sure it goes in there nice and smoothly. The thing to do is remember with the T-handle, you actually want the handle part facing towards the blade where it's raising up at the other end. Because once you glue this on, it's going to be on there forever and you don't want to have the handle the wrong way. So basically, sitting in there, it's actually nice and kind of pretty smoothly going in through there. So the next stage after that, just make sure I also have the heat shrink is down the shaft, not on the piece you've cut off. Because again, once the handle is epoxied in there, it will not be able to kind of slide over the end. So do keep that in mind. Okay, so now we're moving on to the part of epoxying the actual handle in. I'm actually going to be using the 5-minute G5 from West Systems, but any epoxy, as we said before, will work. Just make sure you follow the instructions on this one. So this is an equal parts mix, so it makes it nice and simple to go through. And the big thing is making sure you get the right amount in so we can get it kind of mixed through. Again, I'm still kind of wearing the safety goggles and also the gloves to make sure I don't spray anything up. With this, you're going to make sure you have a rag and everything to clean up any of your mess, and also you don't want to be getting any kind of going down the handle and drying, because it will actually make it uncomfortable for paddling later on. So before you put the epoxy in there, make sure you've cleaned out anything on the shaft, and as we mentioned before, make sure you actually have your seal down, your heat shrink further down the tube. So the two areas you're going to want to put this one is inside the shaft, so you get a good kind of seal in there, and then of course on the part of the handle which is going to go inside the shaft. You want to make sure you don't overdo this, because when you push it in, it's going to actually end up then popping out through the top, and you don't want that to happen, because once again you'll get an area which will have a kind of a lumpy part on the top. Okay, again we want to make sure hands are not clean, so they're not going to be touching anywhere on the handle. Making sure we have the handle facing the right direction with the blade. And we just do a nice slide in there. Big thing on here is to make sure you get the pressure all the way down. So I have this kind of down at the moment. what I actually like to do is, in case you actually have any of the resin on the gloves and everything before you grab the handle anymore, I always kind of take them off because I don't want to be smearing it through. To make sure I have some pressure on it to hold on through, I actually like to put a bit of tape either side, goes over the top of the handle, and just kind of pull it down, making sure that everything goes down nice and evenly and keeps the pressure on there to hold it in there for the few minutes. All right, and next we're just going to let that dry for the next 5 minutes and then be able to move on to the next stage. So now once the epoxy is dried, we can actually remove the tape and get on to the final stage, which is going to be putting the actual heat shrink on. Today we're actually going to be using the heat shrink gun, which we have here, but if you just even have a lighter, you can do that with that. So this stage, you just kind of slide up the heat shrink. Make sure you got it over the end, so it kind of covers where the two seams would be kind of meeting each other. And then basically just heat it up, and then it should seal it in there to make sure it's all nice and waterproof. And at that stage, now just letting that cool off, but you are pretty much ready to go paddling.